We romanticize the idea of limitless creative freedom. Write whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want. Sounds great. Except most people with total freedom write nothing. Here's why. This video is about why creativity doesn't thrive in chaos, it thrives in containment. And by the end, I'm going to show you why the boundaries you think are holding you back might actually be the only thing that can actually set you free. Welcome, everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Daniel, and this is The Story Renaissance. If you've ever had a completely open weekend to write, no obligations, no deadlines, total freedom, and somehow written less than when you only had 30 minutes, this is for you. Because we've been told this lie that constraints kill creativity, that structure is the enemy of art, where real writers need endless space and time and freedom to create. But what if that's backwards? What if the reason you're not writing isn't because you don't have enough freedom, it's because you have too much? Here's what nobody tells you about creative freedom. It sounds like a dream. No rules, no limits, just you and the blank page and infinite possibility. But in practice, infinite possibility doesn't feel like freedom, it feels like drowning. Because when you can write anything, you freeze. When you have all day to write, you never start. When there's no structure, no container, no boundary to push against, you just drift from hour to hour, paralyzed by choice. I've watched this destroy people. Someone finally gets what they've been waiting for their whole lives. They quit their job to write full time, all the freedom in the world. And 6 months later, they've written less than when they were stealing 20 minutes before work. And the worst part, they blame themselves. They think, I finally got what I needed and I still couldn't do it. Maybe I'm just not a real writer. But that's not what happened. What happened is they got too much freedom. And freedom without structure isn't liberating, it's suffocating. When you have no constraints, every choice feels equally possible and equally pointless. You spend hours deciding what to write instead of actually writing, and eventually you just stop opening the document altogether. So, what actually happens when you give yourself boundaries? Quick aside, if you've been drowning in too much freedom and you're tired of doing this alone, I run a community for writers called The Story Renaissance. It's built around structure and containment, not endless possibility. The link's in the description. All right, back to it. Here's the thing about boundaries. They don't limit creativity, they rescue it. When you have a deadline, you stop overthinking and start writing. When you have a word count, you stop waiting for the perfect sentence and just fill the page. When you have a time limit, you stop editing in your head and you get the words out. Constraints don't make the work smaller, they make it possible. Think about it this way. If I tell you to write something, you'll stare at the screen. But if I tell you to write 500 words about someone who just realized they made a terrible mistake, you'll start typing. Not because the second one is easier, but because it gives you a place to begin, a boundary to push against, a container for all that overwhelming possibility. And that container is what lets you breathe. Because the truth is, you don't need more options. You need fewer. You don't need more time. You need a clear start and a clear end. You don't need more freedom. You just need enough structure to know what you're doing and when you're done. But it's not just about making the work easier. There's something deeper happening here. Here's what I've learned about why boundaries actually help. They make the work safe. When you sit down to write with no structure, no time limit, no clear endpoint, you're completely exposed. Every doubt can get in. Every distraction can pull you away. Every voice in your head telling you this doesn't matter has free reign. But when you have a container, I'm writing for 30 minutes, or I'm finishing this scene, or I'm getting to 1,000 words, you've made a promise to yourself. You know what you're doing. You know when it ends. That removes the fear of, is this enough? Should I keep going? Will I ever be done? You just show up, you do the thing, you finish. And that sense of completion, even if the work is messy, even if it's not perfect, is what keeps you alive as a writer. Without containment, writing feels like falling. You never know if you've done enough. You never feel finished. You just carry this constant low grade guilt that you should be doing more. With containment, you can actually close the document and walk away without hating yourself. And that difference between endless guilt and earned rest is everything. But here's the thing most people get wrong about containment. When I talk about containment, people hear prison. They think I'm saying you need to follow someone else's rules, squeeze yourself into a formula, kill everything wild and interesting about your work. That's not what I'm saying. Containment isn't about making the work smaller or safer or more palatable. It's about making it survivable. It's the difference between saying, I'll write when inspiration strikes, and I'll write every Monday for an hour. The first one sounds romantic, artistic, free, but it's also why you haven't written anything in 3 months. The second one sounds restrictive, boring, like you're clocking in, but it's actually what lets you stop agonizing over whether today is the day and just write. Containment is the structure that protects you from yourself, from the part of you that will endlessly deliberate and second guess and wait for the perfect moment that never comes. It's what lets you stop asking whether you'll write and just focus on what you'll write. And that shift from constant questioning to just doing the work is the only thing that matters. Which brings me to the thing that changed everything for me. Here's what I need you to hear. Boundaries aren't what keep you from writing. Boundaries are what keep you alive as a writer. Because creativity doesn't come from having infinite options. It comes from making one choice and following it through. And you can't do that when the possibilities never end. You need constraints to know what you're building. You need limits to know when you're done. You need edges to know what you're protecting. Think about any art form that lasts. Poetry thrives in structures. Haikus aren't less creative because they have rules. They're more creative because the rules force you to mean something with every word. Songwriters don't have unlimited time. They have about 3 minutes, and that limitation is what makes every line count. Writers don't need complete freedom to do their best work. They just need enough structure to start, just enough focus to continue, and just enough boundary to finish. That's what containment is. It's not what kills your creativity, it's what keeps your creativity from killing you. Because freedom without boundaries doesn't lead to more work, it leads to paralysis, to guilt, to the slow, quiet belief that maybe you just aren't cut out for this. But containment, simple, clear, non negotiable structure, leads to finished work. And finished work is the only proof you'll ever have that you're actually a writer. If you're tired of drowning in too much freedom, if you're exhausted from waiting for the perfect conditions that never come and the perfect idea that never arrives, I built something for exactly that. It's called the Story Renaissance. It's a community built around containment, not chaos. We have a weekly write together stream with a clear start and a clear end. You show up, you write, you're done. No endless wondering if you did enough. No guilt when you step away, just a container you can trust. And we talk about this, about how to build structure that doesn't feel like prison, how to stop waiting and start finishing, how to keep going when everything in you wants to quit. No courses, no gurus, just a room with boundaries that make the work possible. There's a 7-day free trial, links in the description and pinned comment below. I'd love to have you there. So here's what I want you to take from this. Creativity doesn't need more freedom, it needs more containment. Boundaries aren't what hold you back, they're what hold you together. And if you can stop romanticizing limitless freedom and start building simple, sustainable structure into your life, you'll write more than you ever thought you could. And maybe more importantly, you'll actually finish. Now that you understand this, the next video you need to watch is this one I made about the emotional middle. Because containment is what carries you through the middle when everything feels pointless. That video shows you what's really happening when the work gets hard. And if you watch that one next, you'll see how these two ideas work together. I'll see you there.